Cassandra could walk into any room and have it tilt toward her. She'd been doing it to me my whole life, taking the space, the light, and when she felt like it, the people. But this time, she didn't see me coming. If you were in my place, would you have stepped aside or stepped in? Before we begin, tap like and subscribe. It keeps these stories coming, and the next one you'll want to hear. The art gallery cafe smelled of fresh roast and rain-soaked coats. My fingers circled the rim of my cup, tracing the thin line of steam rising from it. Cassandra's laugh cut through the air like glass catching light. It wasn't loud, it was tuned. She knew how to make it carry just enough for people to look over. The waiter lingered when he refilled her water, his eyes catching on the silver pendant around her neck. I kept my gaze on the coffee. Across from me, Ethan's hand stilled over his saucer. When I glanced up, he was looking at me, not her. It wasn't a long look, but it was steady enough to make the sound of clinking cups fade into something muted and far away. Cassandra's voice carried on, wrapping a story around herself like she always did. Something about a theater premiere, names I didn't recognize, but that she rolled across her tongue as if they mattered more than the coffee in front of her. Ethan's gaze flicked back to her for a moment, polite, before drifting my way again. I noticed the way his thumb traced the handle of his cup, slow, deliberate, as if it was the only thing keeping him anchored. The air between us didn't change in any visible way, but I felt it. The kind of shift that doesn't need words. When we left, Cassandra took the lead, her umbrella opening with a practiced flick. I walked behind them, listening to the sound of rain tapping the fabric above. Their heads. When we parted ways at the corner, Ethan glanced back just once, just enough to see me watching. Cassandra's invitation had arrived in the way all of hers did. Short, sharp, and impossible to refuse without looking like the smaller one. Her study was all warm lamps and leather-bound books. The TV murmured low in the background, some show neither of them were paying attention to. I sat in the armchair near the bay window, the cold from the glass brushing my shoulder. Cassandra was restless that evening. She kept getting up, adjusting. The globe on the desk, flipping through a stack of unopened mail. Every time she moved, Ethan's eyes followed for a moment before returning to the middle distance. I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. I let my eyes wander the room, the faint scent of old paper and beeswax, the hum of the radiator, the slow sway of the velvet curtains when a draft passed. When her phone rang, Cassandra smiled at the screen and walked toward the hall. Her voice carried back in bright rising tones as she disappeared into the library. The door clicked shut. The silence she left behind was heavier than I expected. The TV's low chatter sounded tiny now, almost intrusive. Ethan reached for the framed sketch on the coffee table. "Want some?" he asked. I held out my glass. His fingers brushed mine when he passed it over. A light, brief touch that stayed longer in my mind than it had in reality. "Thanks," I said. His gaze lingered just for a breath before he leaned back. The sound of Cassandra's voice drifted faintly from the hallway, but neither of us turned toward it. When she came back, the air in the room hadn't shifted back yet. Cassandra's weekend trip was no secret. She'd mentioned it at dinner. The week before, her tone all breezy carelessness, as if she wanted me to know exactly when the apartment would be empty. The evening air was sharp against my face as I walked up her cobblestone path. The porch light buzzed faintly, casting a pale circle over the step. I knocked once before letting myself in. The smell of this space hit first-age mahogany, something warm from the oven, and the clean scent of paper. Ethan was on the couch, a book open in his lap, though his eyes weren't on the page. A mug sat on the table beside him, steam curling in thin ribbons. He looked up as I closed the door behind me. His brow lifted, not in surprise, but acknowledgement. slipped off my coat, hanging it neatly by the door, and crossed the room in slow, even steps. My fingertips brushed the edge of a wingback chair as I passed, the fabric cool beneath them. I stopped by the table, eyes on the cover of the book in his lap. "Good one?" I asked. "It's fine," he said, but he didn't look down at it. The space between us felt narrow, like something invisible had tightened the air. I moved to the other end of the couch, sitting at a polite angle. He didn't shift away. "You're not surprised to see me," I said. "I'm not," he replied. Neither of us spoke after that. We didn't need to. The clock in the hallway ticked in steady, deliberate beats. I stayed where I was for a moment longer, my palm resting lightly against his jaw. His eyes held mine, the light from the lamp catching the faint shadow along his cheek. I let my hand drift down slow enough for him to feel every inch of the movement through the fabric of his sleeve. The muscle beneath shifted once, a subtle flex as though he was catching himself from moving. His breathing came lower, slower, matching the rhythm of my steps. As I moved closer, when I stopped, our knees were almost touching. The warmth from him found its way across the narrow space between us. I reached for his wrist, not pulling, just enough for my fingers to wrap around it, and guided his hand to the side of my waist. The fabric of my blouse pressed between us, warm from the heat I carried. His palm rested there still, but his thumb gave the smallest shift against the seam. I didn't acknowledge it. Instead, I held his wrist lightly, keeping it in place, a silent permission that neither of us named. He didn't move it away. I leaned forward until my shoulder was almost against his. The air between us thinned. When I spoke, my voice was low enough that my breath reached the side of his neck first. The faint rise of his collar shifted against my cheekbone as he drew in a longer breath than before. He didn't turn his head to face me, not yet, but I felt the slightest tilt toward where I was. My fingers trailed back down his arm, tracing the ridge of fabric over his forearm. I found the edge of his cuff and smoothed it with my thumb, straightening it until the line was perfect. I let my hand travel to his knuckles, brushing lightly before pulling back. Every motion was measured, designed to keep him waiting for what came next. He stayed still, except for the slow curl of his fingers into his own palm. Without warning, I eased down onto the couch beside him. The cushion dipped, the space between us narrowing to almost nothing. I turned slightly, crossing one leg toward him so that my knee aligned with his. The angle shifted our shoulders closer, close enough that the line of my sleeve brushed the back of his hand resting on his knee. The air felt warmer here, the lamp casting a softer glow over his profile. I lifted my hand again, this time sliding it beneath his chin. My fingers were gentle, but firm enough to tilt his face toward mine. His gaze met mine fully now, and the quiet between us grew heavier. I kept my hand there, holding his eyes with mine for several steady beats, giving him no reason and no chance to look away. "She doesn't get to take everything," I said, my tone even but final. The words landed and stayed, settling into the space between us, like something neither of us could undo. His breath caught just slightly, the faintest shift in his jaw, betraying that he'd heard me exactly the way I meant it. I lowered my hand slow enough for the absence to register. Standing, I smoothed the line of my sleeve, letting the silence stretch until it felt almost tangible. Crossing to the bookshelf, I picked up his book, turned it upright, and slid it neatly onto the shelf, spine out, perfectly aligned with the others. A small thing, but one he'd see every time he walked past. I didn't look back when I reached the door. The last sound was the creak of the chair as he leaned forward, followed by the soft click as the latch caught. The moment was mine, and she'd never even know, to be honest. Would you have left it there, or would you have taken it further? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe and turn on notifications so you're Here for the next one. Your support keeps these moments coming.